Mass demonstrations spread across Israel after the government passed a controversial law restricting the power of the country's judiciary system. The Israeli government says a series of planned reforms will strengthen democracy in the country. Eun-jin reports.
The Israeli government on Monday passed a controversial bill that's triggered some of the biggest protests in the country's history. By the evening of the same day, protests against the bill had spread nationwide as thousands of people blocked roads and clashed with police in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and other parts of the country. The so-called reasonableness bill prevents Israel's Supreme Court from overruling government decisions that it considers senseless. It was approved by 64 votes to 0 after the opposition boycotted the final vote. The passing of this law is the first of a broader set of judicial reforms which the government has set out to correct what it describes as a power imbalance. Demonstrations on the streets of Israel have been taking place weekly since the start of the year in an effort to protect what protesters say is an attack on democracy. And at the end of last week, leading up to the parliamentary voting, tens of thousands of protesters marched some 70 kilometers from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and set up camp in a park between the Knesset, which is Israel's parliament, and the Supreme Court. On Monday morning, protesters blocking a boulevard outside the Knesset were sprayed by a water cannon and pulled off the road by police against a backdrop of drums, whistles, and air horns. Injuries and arrests have been reported. Meanwhile, the government says the series of planned reforms serve to strengthen democracy in the country and that the reasonableness bill was necessary because the Supreme Court had accrued too much power over politics in recent decades. The controversial reforms have polarized Israel, triggering one of the most serious domestic crises in the country's history. Former heads of Israel's security services, chief justices, and prominent legal and business figures have also been vocal against the government's reforms. Eun-jin, Arirang News.